Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you kind of my quick review of the Moza Air 3-axis motorized gimbal stabilizer system. And so this is, those of you that are looking at this review are looking very likely because you are an aspiring, videographer, or you're doing some video work and you're interested in getting, the kind of footage that you can really only get with something like this. And of course, there was a time that that kind of footage was only achievable with really, really expensive dolly systems, and and really only by industry professionals. And so it's a great day to live if you're an aspiring videographer to have these kind of tools available to you. A year ago, I did a review of the Zhiyun crane. It was the first of the 3-axis motorized gimbal systems that I had used. I noted in my review that previously the payload had been 1,200 grams for the crane, which means that you were basically limited to either mirrorless systems or lighter DSLR lens combinations. During my review period, they released a firmware update that extended that threshold, that payload limit, up to 1,700 grams, and now a little bit higher, it's listed at 1,750 grams. What I found, however, is that when I went out into heavier combinations, for example, if I used the 5D Mark IV and I put on something like this Tamron 85mm f1.8, I'm at right under 1,700 grams. And while it can handle that in terms of basic functionality, it kind of falls apart a little bit when I try to do tracking or try to do smooth footage. You can tell just a little bit more of a bounce, and if you try to go, kind of side to side with the gimbal, it's not able to handle that. It's just too much strain for the motors. And so today I am looking at the Moza Air, and this is a new, 3-axis motorized gimbal, but it is designed from the ground up to handle the heavier payload of things like DSLRs. And so as a result here, I've got a 5D Mark IV mounted on here, and I've got a fairly heavy combination here, the 5D Mark IV and a Zeiss Milvus macroplanar 50mm f2 lens. That's about a 1,600 gram combination. And if you compare side by side the footage that I was able to get using the crane in this combination and the Moza Air, you can note that the Air footage is considerably smoother. And that's because its motors are designed to handle that. Beyond that, of course, I was able to easily handle the test where, if I wanted to go side to side like this, that it's able to handle that and without losing it, where when I used the crane, the crane would just fall apart with that kind of combination, just too much load for that. And you can see in the footage that you can hardly tell that I'm moving side to side with the Moza Air when I actually shoot the footage, whereas when I shot with the crane, it was falling apart on each axis as it came apart. A few things that I really like. If for about the same money, you are getting the ability to add on the 2-grip system, which allows you to, number one, reduce a lot of muscle strain, allows you to handle these heavier payloads more effectively and thus get smoother footage. It is very easy to mount these things on, and the bonus is that it comes with a thumb control here that you can add on to that. One of the excellent added accessories for the Moza Air is this thumbstick that gives you, of course, a full range of control over the actual gimbal unit itself. And so this is particularly handy, of course, if you're using the twin handles. But beyond that, it also gives you some extra functionality. For one thing, it'll allow you to switch between different speeds here, and so and that will allow you, obviously, if you're controlling the way that you want the camera to rotate, you have two kind of 3 different speed levels, high, low, but then you can also, there's an additional scroll roll here at the back, and so it'll allow you to access, for example, here, if I hold that down and I go over, it allows me to access a different speed control here, and so I can actually allow that to fluctuate. And so if I go down to like the low, it allows me to go do a much more kind of controlled slow pan there. Or if I want to go faster, of course, I've got that option as well, so where I can really pick it up if I wanted to make more quick units. Now you also have the option of going between the different kind of modes here. And so you can do pitch, and yaw, you can do all lock if you're wanting to keep everything stable. You can go into just yaw mode. And so you've got a number of different options there for how you're going to control the gimbal. Then one other feature which is quite cool, if you happen to have a cable attached going to the camera, Moza does include a number of different cables here for different camera systems. For the 5D Mark IV, I am missing that because instead of a USB 2.0, it's a USB 3.0 access point. But the other option that you have here is that you can actually, if you have that cable connected, you can also control actual video. And so as you can see here, I've enabled video, I can turn the video back off. And so again, if you're working kind of with the handle system and you want a hands-free performance, that certainly is a very welcome addition. The other thing too is that while the app of course is great and the app is free compared to this, actually having a physical thumbstick, and the kind of feedback that an actual physical control gives is definitely more satisfying than using the touch screen, and I think will probably give you a little more finite control because you have better tactile feedback. The quality of the joystick itself is very good, and so that's a positive there. And then of course it can be just mounted onto the accessory bar there to use for that. It can also be charged here via a micro USB port here on the side. And so certainly a very nice accessory if you're willing to pay the extra $200 for it. It's a small thing, but this little kind of tripod stand that comes with it, it seems to make a huge difference. Number one, I really like it during the calibration process. It just gives you a stable platform to start with. I think all of them should come with it. And a lot of times if I'm using it without the two handheld stabilizers, I'll actually just keep this on because I like the additional grip for my second hand there that just allows me to have a little bit more of a better anchor point. That means that I'm able to actually handle the weight a little bit better with these heavier combinations. And so I think that that is a hugely smart feature added on. You of course have the thumbstick here and the ability to go through a wide range of motion even with these larger combinations. That being said, note that if you go to something this large, there is going to be a physical limit to how far that you can go. And so whereas with a completely small combination, you could probably go 360 degrees, although there's some question as to why you would want to go and shoot that kind of shot. But beyond that, the other thing I note is that during the calibration process, if I go to these heavier combinations, you can tell that I'm right out at the very limits of how far I can adjust the actual crane, which is putting more stress on the motors. Whereas with these heavier combinations that I have tried, I have a lot of travel left at all the different adjustment points. And so it means that it's just able to, I'm not pushing the limits, so to speak, the same way. There's other great ergonomic touches, soft touch materials that make it really nice to use and are a little bit better in the cold conditions I sometimes shoot in. It's got markings everywhere at all of the different adjustment points. And so you can actually record where a calibration for a camera lens combination was. I find that to be a really nice touch, and I have a little chart where I'm just tracking those things along the way. But bottom line is that it works. It allows me to get a lot of different really cool, very smooth footage. And I'm far from being the best videographer out there. I'm more of a photographer, stills photographer, and a gear reviewer. But you will find that I'm even, someone that's I don't consider to be a great videographer like myself. I can get great footage. So one nice bonus, of course, is you can download the free Moza Air app. And here I've got it on for iOS on an iPhone 6s. And so once you've got the actual Air powered on, you'll quickly connect in, and then you have a number of different options here. And so you have different calibration options, and you have the ability to have some controls here right through the unit like this. And so that's certainly welcome. But what I want to highlight here really is about the time-lapse feature, which is something that is unique to the Moza Air in comparison to some of the other gimbals that I've seen. And so what it allows you to do is that depending on your camera setup, some of my most recent cameras, they have time-lapse functionality and intervalometer built right into them. And so you can kind of set up in your camera the type of time-lapse you're going to want to do. But then through the gimbal, you can actually add some dynamic movement to that. And so you're going to want to go through the steps, and so to select what kind of shutter interval that you have chosen. And a lot of the time, you know, that's going to be a fairly brief, you know, maybe 2 seconds, or, you know, however long, you know, but however long you're programming in, you have the option to go to put in here anywhere between 1 and 60 seconds in terms of that. You're going to want to then select your shutter speed duration. And so in most cases that may only be a second, but if you're shooting at night, for example, and you're going to be shooting long shutter speeds, you can program in that capability there. And then your target frames per second, and so, you know, depending on what kind of clip you're doing, you know, often a 30 frame per second. And then you can actually put in how long you intend the actual clip to be. And anyway, putting all that information in then lets the gimbal know how long, you know, what kind of time lapse you're going to shoot, and so that it can program its movement accordingly. But then where things get interesting is that you can actually program in the kind of path that you want the gimbal to follow. And so you have the option, of course, of moving it up and down. And so in this case, let's just say for what I'm going to do is that, let's say I want to start with a position like that. And so I can click Add. And once I've done that, I've got a pattern started. Then I can move to my next position. And so let's say I want to move it there, start to rotate it down a little bit. I can add again. And then I can continue to add in movement, and let's say I'm bringing it on down, I can click Add. Now what is interesting is that I can then click the Preview button, and so here I can see in reverse and what, you know, kind of the path that the gimbal is going to follow, make sure that this is what I kind of want for it. And so as you watch here, it's going to show me the path that the camera is going to take over the course of a longer period during the time lapse, but it allows you to make sure that that is what you want. Then when everything is set up, you simply you click, you're going to want to probably start the time lapse in your camera, and you're going to want to hit start there. And then what will happen is that the camera itself will very gradually make movements in accordance to what your time lapse sequence is going to be, which is why it was important to set that up. And you know, you have to be careful to set that up properly, because otherwise you can get footage like this that's a little bit jerky. However, if you set everything up appropriately, you can get extremely smooth time-lapse footage that has that added dynamic quality of some movement as a part of it, making this a really cool extra feature that doesn't cost you any extra. All in all, wow, this isn't cheap, but it's also not cheap in any sense of the word. It's beautifully constructed. It comes with a very nice custom molded carrying case for everything. You can tell that all of the engineering is very good. All of the knobs feel very good. In fact, they feel more sturdy than what the crane is. And the crane costs just as much money, but you're getting more functionality here with the Moza Air. And so if you are looking to use heavier combinations like DSLRs, particularly full frame DSLRs with heavier lenses, I think that this is a great option for you to consider, and something that I have no problem in recommending here. I'm Dustin Abbott, and if you look in the description down below, I have got some linkage there, and so you can go and you can purchase one for yourself. And of course, you can also follow me there on social media, become one of my patrons. And if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.